let's build a marquee box. This is a marquee box. And we're going to be building it out of this Pub Time Darts marquee. Because I have a lot of marquees, so I need to start building some of these boxes. You may be asking, why would you build a box instead of just hanging it on the wall? And here's why. See, the box allows you to actually have a light behind it, so it looks like it would have originally, instead of just, boring without the light. So let's get to building this box. This marquee isn't in amazing condition, but it's original, and it's in good enough condition. To build this, I'm simply just going to use this cheap little 1x4 board here, and get to measuring, and cutting, and sanding. And now we just need to simply get the measurements of the marquee. We're looking at 24 inches and an eighth, and we're looking at 4 inches and 3/4. Okay, perfect. Now you also have to account for how far this is going to sit into the wood. I like to go about 1/8 of an inch all the way around. Using the table saw to cut off these ends, I now have 2 boards that look... Where did I put the other board? Where the fuck did it... Oh, it's under the marquee. That look exactly like that. But you gotta make sure these boards usually have a smooth side and a rough side. You wanna make sure you build it so the rough side is gonna be facing inward, so you have to do less sanding. I should also note that I do not claim to be a carpenter, nor will I ever claim to be a carpenter. But now we can check our sizing, make sure we overlap just a little bit over there and a little bit over here. Perfect, because we're gonna actually sink this into the wood some. So we want a little bit of overlap from where the sides and eventually the top and bottom will be. But speaking of the sides, now let's build the sides. It's like we just got away with not having to use this garbage end. So we're good. We got our 2 sides. Now we just got to cut the angle in. I don't know why I didn't cut the angle in with them before I cut with this. I didn't think about that. But now I am. It's just loosely setting together here so we can check the sizing. I haven't actually checked the sizing yet, so we're going to figure out if the ends are too tall or not. And it looks like we did perfect, so we can have a little bit in the top and bottom. Perfect. Now we just need to cut the groove, which admittedly probably would have been easier to cut the groove into the giant piece before I cut it into little bits, but it doesn't really matter. We have the angle and the height set. We need to set how far we want the marquee to sit from the edge. I usually like to go about a quarter to half inch in. We have our first groove cut in all the pieces. I'm simply going to move the guard over a little bit and cut another groove right beside it until we get to wide enough to fit the marquee. And now, all of the slots are cut so that the marquee will slide in loosely. You don't want to be super tight or you're going to scratch the artwork on the marquee. So you want it to be a loose fit, but not too loose. So these are all perfect. Now it's time to get them all finished up before we glue them together. And to do that, I'm going to do a bit of sanding, and I'm also going to take them onto the whatever the hell that is and give these some nice angles on the edges. I'm all sanded, got fancy angles on them. Ultimately, if you were going to sell these things, you'd want to use a much higher quality wood than this, but these are just for hanging around in my arcade, so I didn't want to buy a whole bunch of expensive wood. So, now let's assemble this box. But, you got to make sure you don't assemble it too far, because if you glue the whole box together, then you can't get the marquee in. So, I've actually went this design. So, I have these two, this corner here drying, and this corner here drying. So then, I'm just going to, I think, put some kind of like pegs or something in each of these ends, so I can just, slot these together to actually hold it together, and then you can just pull them apart to pull the marquee out or whatever. So I think that's what we're going to do, but for now, let's let these dry, and I'll see you when they dry. And it should be dry. Unfortunately, I realized I kind of screwed up. I should have actually cut 2 grooves, one on each side, because then I could slot in a back panel, and the back panel would look really nice. Unfortunately, we're going to just have to ugly mount the back panel, but when I build the next one, because I got like 30 of these to do, I'll cut a second groove on the other side, so I can slot in a back panel as well. Alright, so I was going to do some fancy pegs to make this attach, but then I decided that's going to take way too goddamn long. So I found some somewhat decorative screws, so we're just going to use those. I'm just going to countersink them in, and I'm going to put them in all 4 corners. So let's do that. I'm just pre-drilling all the holes with this tiny drill bit, and then just countersinking with the larger drill bit. And using these fancy corner clamps to make it square. And this side's done. I did screw up the one side, the other side, the one screws in a little bit further than the rest, but obviously, if I was going to sell this thing, I'd make it a lot better, but for personal use, this is going to be perfect to hang up all these things, and since this is just for personal use, it doesn't really matter. Though, I might actually get some reclaimed pallets and just make some of these out of pallet wood, because, I mean, honestly, I don't need to spend this kind of money on this shitty of wood at Lowe's. I can just get free pallets. And for a finish, we're going to finish it off with some ebony wood stain that's, like, ancient. So let's put this on and then throw it in the oven. It's a beautiful, nice, deep, dark color. I'm gonna have to get it into that knot a little bit, but I love the look of this color. Of course, remember when working with stain to fully drown your rags so you don't have to worry about any spontaneous combusting, as stain rags can spontaneously combust. But these are looking perfect. Now the oven's heating up and we can throw them in and let them dry. barely fit in this oven. This is where having a lab oven that heats incredibly evenly, as it heats on the bottom and the sides, is very important, because otherwise this would cook very unevenly. Okay, these are finally dry. They took way longer in the oven than they usually do, because these were actually baking sap out of them. There's a bunch of sap coming out of it. I'm guessing they're pine or something. I don't know. But now let's put on a wipe on finish and put them back in the oven. Things turned out pretty damn good for being really cheap fucking wood. Honestly, I think pallet wood might have been better. As, well, pallet wood's probably dry and not gonna ooze sap out of it, but these are really fucking hot right now, but they're nice and dry. They're not wet. I rubbed a paper towel over and make sure they're not leaving any marks or anything. So, we're good. We can fully assemble this thing. This actually looks awesome. I do love the look of this stain. It leaves a nice rustic finish that I think goes perfect for what we're building. So, now let's assemble it. Let's put the marquee in it, put a back of some kind on it. Again, had I put a second groove, the back would be nice, but since we don't have a nice groove, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. And add a light. I didn't actually cut the groove deep enough. We do not fit in any direction, which means, unfortunately, well, actually, two good news and bad news. The bad news is we gotta break the glue that we glued and redo this and make that groove a little bit deeper. The good news is we can add our second groove, so let's rip this back apart. Now we have two grooves, slightly deeper. Let's see if it fits. I haven't actually tested it yet, so let's find out. Now, we're good. That's looking awesome. Let's cut a back panel now for it. Let's use some of this thin panel board here. Fortunately, I didn't have a long enough piece, so I had to displace it here. It's already stained with a much lighter stain, but you're never going to see it anyway, so it doesn't matter. But this should work. So let's fully assemble this thing. And, oh shoot, no, we need to build a light first. Let's put a light on this thing. As for the light, I'm just going to use this fancy little Walmart under-the-counter light. Unfortunately, I'm going to need to find something different because these are not the cheapest, and I need to build so many of these that there's no way I could afford enough of these, so I'll have to find something cheaper later. But for now, let's mount this thing in here and see how it looks. On basically, I just put some screws through and then sanded off the backs of the screws. And then I cut this little groove here for the wire to go through. So let's fully assemble this thing and see how it looks. Damn, that is looking so good. Let's plug this thing in and see what it looks like lit up. Okay, moment of truth. Let's twist this thing. Yo, let me turn off the studio lights. Yo, that's looking so good. Look at that. That is awesome looking. The camera is kind of washing out the beer mug there, but that is looking so good. Now, I mean, you can tell it's kind of beat up. It's an original marquee. I might put a diffusion sheet behind it just to diffuse some of this light, but damn, this marquee I probably could have sold just as a blank marquee for like 20 bucks or something. Like this, I'm sure somebody could probably sell this for like 100 and some on Etsy. That's awesome looking.